Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the launch of the Economic Report on Africa 2025, titled Advancing Implementation of the Agreement Establishing Proposing Transformative Strategic Actions, organized jointly by the Policy Center for the New South and the Economic Commission on Africa, Office for North Africa. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Karim Leinawi, Executive President of the Policy Center for the New South, for the introductory remarks. Karim Leinawi, the floor is yours.
Okay, welcome to all of you. Thank you for being here, and many thanks to our friends at UNECA. We're very glad to do this together, and in fact to help you disseminate your product. We will be on a listening mode today, and thank you, Ustad Khairika, for this initiative. As I said, we will be in a listening mode, but let me ask a few questions and see and sort of share with you where we come to those topics here at the Policy Center. It's of course about sort of trying to understand and decipher the ongoing dynamics in African economies, and particularly because we have major shocks in the world economy, and Africa is exposed, and so we were very much looking forward to listen to your assessment. And maybe in the Q&A discussion we can have some, discuss some of the sort of short-term current issues, because it's changing so much, so fast, the policy uncertainty. But there are a couple of things that we look from here very closely at on African economies. I think one of our conclusion of our research, and ourselves actually, L'Arabie Jaidi is here, we publish an annual report on African economies, which is in its fourth edition ongoing. Fourth? See. How is that? Fourth edition? Your report. Your annual report. You're preparing the fourth edition. Yes. Sixth edition, you see. So it's becoming institutionalized. But couple of issues. First one is the macroeconomic, the space for macroeconomic policy has shrunk. It's something we may want to discuss because of the scars that have been left on public finances all across the continent, and true also for advanced economies actually. So fiscal space has shrunk. Debt has increased to unsustainable levels in some countries, and then we can discuss what it means. Some countries are deemed to be sustainable because they're paying, but at a high cost, at a high social cost. So it's a trade-off. So that's one thing. Growth has been acceptable in a couple of countries, but still below what it needs to reduce significantly poverty and vulnerability. Trade seems that very interesting that Africa is sort of a bit of a good student of trade those days, but the promises of our Continental Free Trade Agreement have not delivered yet. And this is a point you will focus on. For many reasons, barriers, sort of inefficiencies, transport, infrastructure, so on and so forth. But that's, I think, something where we need a little bit more dynamism. Labor market is another one that, retain our attention. productivity has been too slow in many countries. Let's remind you, I mean, you're of course well aware of that, but 22 of the 26 low-income countries are in Africa. So it's a very specific, if you look at the continental picture, it's very specific. It's in a way the last frontier of development, and we have middle-income countries that are, for some of them, facing the challenges of extracting themselves from the middle-income trap, being more innovative, moving from imitation to innovation, and industrial policies back in a way. You may want to share with us what it means and what Africa does with the digital transition, and how it is integrated in national systems of innovation, and its impact on productivity. I think this is a big sort of big piece of any growth strategy over the next 5-10 years of the continent, but of countries as well. And maybe also your view, Ustad Hiraika, on also capacity to implement complex policies. These are, we tend to minimize the complexity of policy formulation, the political economy of public policies, and how there are difficulties. Agriculture is another one, remains very important, a big chunk of labor force in many countries. Their integration of global sort of trade has been not fully sort of at the profit of the benefit of African countries. So I think many issues that overlap between medium to long run, long-term economic growth strategies and short-term challenges. And so I think, we here at the Policy Center, since we work a lot on that, we think that governments will be under high pressure over the coming 2 years, and how maybe UNECA can help. Maybe it's an opportunity for you to share as well a little bit on your institution, how you help, how you work with think tanks, how you connect with academic institutions, and how you contribute to a sort of more optimal nexus between public policy making, science, transparency on public policies, and also to sort of constitute the backbone of innovation policies for growth on our continent. So again, let me welcome all of you here, and again, many thanks to our friends at UNECA for doing this. And of course, we hope to continue this together. Just a few words for those that don't know the Policy Center. I think it's important. It's 120 people. It's a not-for-profit that is being vested with public interest by the Moroccan government. We have around 75 researchers, all generation, from early mid-20s all the way to senior fellows that have been former ministers, former ambassadors. We do economics as well as international politics, which we don't necessarily find in many think tanks that tend to be specialized on one of those. So we'll be, of course, it's a science sort of based institution. It's fact-based, empirical, applied research to inform public policy making. So we stand at the crossroad of public policy, academia, and science. And of course, being a not-for-profit and NGO. You are here on the campus of the Mohammed VI Polytechnic University, where we are hosted, and of course we have interactions with the university, mainly through smart interactions, which is mainly through teachings. I have like 25 of our 120 colleagues are teaching at the university, so as affiliate professors. And also we host students on campus through internships and many other kind of opportunities. For them, we have a very strong emerging leader programs that could interest your staff, by the way. Some of you are beyond the point of being emerging leaders, you're emerged leaders. But for your staff could be very interesting. We have like 6 or 7 ways to interact with students, ranging from, of course, hiring them, positions, internships, but also dedicated program on specific issues, including with some of our partners. So they're not necessarily taking place in Morocco. They can be opportunities that are available for particularly with our partners in Italy and India as well. So again, many thanks, and the floor is yours, Mr. Khaira. Thank you.
Next, please welcome Mr. Adam Al-Hiraika, Director of the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa, Office for North Africa. Adam Al-Hiraika, the floor is yours.
Okay. Good morning. Assalamu alaikum. Bonjour. I would like to first of all start by thanking Professor Karim Al-Nawi, Executive Director of the Policy Center for the New South, and recognize the presence of many ambassadors, diplomats, and colleagues, heads of UN agencies here, led by Ms. Natalie, Regional Coordinator for Morocco, and also my colleagues from United Nations Economic Commission for Africas, led by Stephen Karinge, Director of ECA Regional Integration and Trade Division, a division that has always led ECA landmark work on regional integration and trade. And in ECA, we always pride ourselves in really leading intellectually work on Africa's regional integration. Since the establishment of ECA in 1958, we always focused on bringing African countries together, small independent African countries at that time. And so we are very proud that if you visit our headquarters in Addis Ababa, you will see the old building where ECA started in 1958 being now renovated as a museum, UN museum in Addis Ababa. It was opened by the Secretary General last October. And this is the place where ECA was able to bring African leaders, newly independent countries, head of states and governments, to form the African Union. So it was there in ECA. And also I always remember meetings with former president of Senegal, Mr. Abdoulaye Wade, the late Abdoulaye Wade, and he used to mention this. I was recruited by ECA to draft a study on African Development Bank. And African Development Bank was established here through ECA. So we have also contributed to the establishment of regional economic communities, all of them across Africa. And maybe some of you here remember our longest serving executive secretary, the DG of Nigeria, very outspoken intellectual. And of course, all the journey towards Africa's regional integration, Lagos Plan of Action, and Abuja, and then the AfCFTA. It's a big event. And African Continental Free Trade Area is signed by all African countries now, ratified by all African countries. And we are supporting many African countries to develop plans to implement AfCFTA. And I believe AfCFTA is the way forward for Africa. I also, being a professor for a long time, I used to always tell my students that when I was a student in the UK, I did not like many of the textbooks they used to give to us because they tell us African countries are too small to to build competitiveness and trade with each other. So they have to be connected with the rest of the world vertically, and they do not waste time trying to connect horizontally. That was wrong, because today, through the good work we have been doing, Kenya, for example, is the main trading partner for almost all countries in East Africa. And South Africa is the main trading partner for all countries in Southern Africa, SADC community, and so on and so forth. And so we are looking forward also to seeing countries in North Africa, especially like Morocco, connecting deeply. And Stephen Karingi is going to present the report, economic report on Africa 2025, on AfCFTA and its promises for Africa. I will make a short intervention on some highlights in Morocco about what Morocco is doing really to link or to increase ties with the rest of Africa. And then we have also people here. Brahimi, I think, is here, who supported us and the government of Morocco to develop a Moroccan implementation plan for AfCFTA. So I don't want to take too much time. Once again, I would like to thank Professor Karim, and we are really, I do subscribe to the issues you have raised as priorities. All the countries of North Africa today are middle-income countries, with the exception of Sudan, still low-income countries. So, and we have seen your work, Professor Karim, on middle-income countries. We are also focusing on issues facing middle-income countries as priorities. And these issues include this middle-income, what they call middle-income trap. Countries grow at a high rate. When they reach a certain level of income, then growth tends to be slow, and it gets difficult for them to overcome the middle-income trap because of issues related to productivity, because of issues related to finance, because of issues related to inequality, inclusion, and because of issues related to technology, climate change, and so on. These are all very important priorities for us, and we will look for opportunities to working, of course, with as a team within the United Nations, led by the Regional Coordinator's Office, to work with think tanks like the Policy Center, and with member states and other institutions to really build momentum to overcome this. And I just came a few days ago from Uganda, where ECA organized African Regional Forum on Sustainable Development. And I am very happy to, as someone who have seen Africa's journey and the changes that took place in Africa over the last 30 years, I can assure you the changes are important. Many of our countries are making progress. Your country ambassador, Rwanda, is a good example. Kenya, right here in Morocco, in countries here in North Africa and Southern Africa, West Africa, everywhere you go, you see impressive developments. But these developments remain below our potential, remain low compared to what we need in order to address Africa's issues of inclusion, of poverty, and so on. So the potential is huge, and AfCFTA should help us to build on this potential and make it happen. One thing I want to mention also, coming from that conference, today the world is facing challenges related to trade, and we'll be talking about these challenges, including tariffs. Also the world, especially in developing countries like Africa, continent like Africa, the issue of finance. I'm very happy to see that today we are preparing for the fourth international conference on financing for development to be held in Spain, June, people are no longer talking about overseas development assistance. They are talking about mobilizing and managing domestic resources. And I just saw some reports by OECD that really confirm what we are doing with some countries in North Africa. Countries like Morocco and Tunisia are leading Africa in terms of mobilization of domestic resources and management, especially tax revenue mobilization, revenue as a percentage of GDP. In Morocco and Nigeria and Tunisia has been close to 30%. Or it varies from 1 year to year. And this explains the infrastructure. You see infrastructure work in Morocco and the things. And the fact that Tunisia, despite the turmoil it has been going through since 2011, is really still holding. So all countries need to really benefit from these experiences. And we did that. We worked with Sudan and Mauritania and Libya to learn from Egyptians' experience in tax revenue mobilization. So just imagine, while tax revenue as a percentage of GDP is close to 30 or 25, 27, in Tunisia and Morocco, it's 14%. In Libya, in Egypt, it was only 5% in Sudan and 2% in Libya. So there is a lot that we need to do domestically, really, and Africa can really mobilize the resources needed. Also, issues of natural resources management, major issues. Many countries with plenty of resources are not managing these resources. And we can see good examples also from Morocco in terms of government control over natural revenues such as phosphate. So there are a lot of things to discuss and to follow up after this meeting. For the time being, once again, I would like to thank you all for your presence, and I look forward to exciting discussions with all of you. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, the presentation of the Economic Report on Africa 2025 will now commence. Please welcome our moderator for this session, Abdelaziz Aitali, Head of the Research in Economics Department at the Policy Center for the New South. And our speakers, Adam Al-Hiraika, Director of the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa, Office for North Africa. Stephen Karenji, Director of the Regional Integration and Trade Division of the UN Economic Commission for Africa in Addis Ababa. Abdelaziz Aitali, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Welcome. So I'm Abdelaziz Aitali, economist and head of the Economic Research Department, and I'm very delighted to moderate this session with our distinguished panelists from the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa. So very glad to host you here and to have your insights on the recent developments on a very crucial and very mega project here in Africa. Everyone knows that this is the future. We are discussing the future of Africa, the future of the next generation. So the expectations are very high, but the challenges that we face also are very high. So maybe without any further ado, I will give the floor to our first panelist, Mr. Adam Al-Hiraika, who is the Director of the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa, Office for North Africa. And for an extended version of the biographies, please refer back to the agenda. So, Mr. Adam, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Stephen and I agreed to have a coup d'etat. And so he will do the presentation. He will start and do the presentation on growth and AfCFTA. And I will make some contributions related to Morocco and AfCFTA. Thank you.
Okay, good morning, Excellencies. It's good to see all of you here. I'm going to start on the protocols that have already been established, but I feel very much at home to be here in Morocco and very much here in the Policy Center. As you'll see in the biography, in my past life, I used to work in a center like this in Nairobi, and I feel like I don't want to go back feeling the experience and feeling of the energy. So what I'm going to do is to take us through the presentation of the Economic Report on Africa. This is the flagship publication of the ECA. The theme of each of this Economic Report on Africa was actually suggested by the African Ministers of Finance, Planning and Economic Development when they met in Victoria Falls in 2024 during their Conference of Ministers. They basically said, can you prepare a report that we can discuss to see what are those strategic actions that we need to take so that we can accelerate the implementation of the AfCFTA and get optimal results out of it. And so they spent a lot of time discussing that under the chairmanship of the Kingdom of Morocco in March this year. And hopefully next year we'll be able to give a report on what has happened since then, because the Conference of Ministers of Finance, Planning and Economic Development for next year is actually going to be hosted by the government of the Kingdom of Morocco. So we have heard from Professor Karim and from Adam their mention of the AfCFTA. So what the report does, first of all, let me first of all give the background of the AfCFTA. So we have all these positive mega trends and experiences that Africa is currently experiencing. They are discussed and in the report, and this is about the youthful population that as a continent we have. Then you have the abundance of natural resources, including things like critical minerals that are today the subject of conversations, even as the geopolitics continue to shape up. Then there is also the demonstration by African countries so far of their capacity actually to leapfrog technologically, as they showed when it came to issues of the fintech. Actually, Africa is leading when it comes to some of these things. And then, of course, the growing consumer market. So these are positive things that are happening in the continent. But then there are a good number of challenges that we have that the AfCFTA is being overlaid over, and which we hope it will help us to address. The first one is the issue of the stagnant trade. As a continent, we continue to lag behind when it comes to the intra-African trade compared to other intra-regional trades. Then the economic growth has been sluggish, not just within Africa, especially because of the scarring that Professor Karim mentioned, but also in the rest of the world. The SDGs, we are lagging behind globally, including in Africa. And then, of course, many countries continue to depend a lot on on commodities. So this is sort of the panoply within which the AfCFTA is coming into play. And so before I go deeper then into the AfCFTA, let's first of all then focus on what is happening in the continent today, because the report first gives the socio-economic development issues of the continent before we go to the thematic question of the strategic actions that needs to be undertaken under the AfCFTA. And I think all of you have been following this story of what's happening when it comes to growth. We know the global economy, the growth is expected to remain stable, but subdued. I think there are new numbers that were released this week at the spring meetings of the IMF and the bank. But when we published this report, using the data from the World Economic and Social Prospect that is produced by the United Nations, the numbers were such that we are going to have 2.8% growth in 2025 and 2.9% next year. Now, for low-income countries, many of which we had are in the continent, and also the vulnerable countries, they are going to continue having issues because of their vulnerability when it comes to growth. For Africa as a whole, the projections were that there is going to be a rebound for this year, 2025, compared to last year. So we were expecting a growth of 3.9% this year before reaching 4.1% in 2026. Maybe during the discussion, we may talk about the shocks that are coming out of the global trade shock, because we have done some analysis. But when we published the report, these were the numbers. But I'm happy to give more information on what we are finding out. Now, what is driving Africa's growth? It's mainly greater private consumption. I talked about the issue of the growing consumer market, improvements in trade performance, because we hope the AfCFTA is going to do this, and also the easing of the tight global financial conditions. Actually, before the global shocks that we are experiencing now, a number of countries had even gone back to the market, including a country like Kenya. I think, I don't know whether it was Angola or Gabon. You know, the markets were starting to open again for African countries. Now, when it comes to the sub-regional growth, because I think this is of importance, because we are in North Africa, East Africa continues to lead the growth within the continent, and this is because of robust activity in countries like Ethiopia, Kenya, and Rwanda, followed by West Africa, and mainly in West Africa is because of the higher mining activity, and you get all these details within the report, including oil and gas production, and also the fiscal consolidation. And then Southern Africa is expected to register the lowest growth of 2.4% in 2025 to 2026 when you disaggregate among the five regions. So that's the story when you look at the continental, and then you try to see what is happening at the sub-regional level. And in fact, if you look back, you can see East Africa for the last couple of years has actually continued to be to lead the continent in terms of growth. Now, we talked about the fiscal position. Now, by the time of publishing this report, we were expecting an improvement of this because of the growth recovery this year and next year. The fiscal account and the current accounts, they were projected to decline to about 3.9% in 2026. In other words, the deficits, it was expected to improve from a much more negative to a lower negative, if I can use that language, of minus 3.9% in 2026, as many countries adopted fiscal consolidation strategies. Now, even debt was expected actually to decline from the huge percentage, as you can see in the graph there. And this was also going to be as a result of the robust growth and also the narrowing of the current accounts. When it comes to inflation, even though prices, we were expecting the prices to remain high, but inflationary pressures are easing within across the continent. And in fact, we see this as an opportunity for probably monetary policy coming in to complement the fiscal efforts that are being undertaken through the fiscal consolidation to support Africa's growth. And this is something that we may also want to discuss because of the new dynamics. But that's what the report is arguing, that maybe African countries have an opportunity to have a role for monetary policy to support the fiscal efforts that are being done through the consolidation. However, having said that, we had already anticipated that the growth could be negatively affected by the global economic risks, because already we had heard about the possibilities that there was going to be changes in the trade policy, and especially because of the US-China trade war. So this is the story when it comes to the fiscal performance and what is likely to happen to the growth. So having given that background, then the report turns into talking about the AfCFTA. And for those of us who have not spent about time on the AfCFTA, you may just have heard about it, but you have not had the opportunity. The report is a good source, and we are going to give you the links later. It's a good source of sort of a masterclass of the AfCFTA in one of the chapters. But the AfCFTA is one of the deepest agreements that one can think of. It has all those protocols that you see there. I was told I can actually be able to point. Yes. You see the top there. All those are protocols that the African countries have already negotiated. Not just negotiated, they have also signed them. So you have a protocol on trade in goods. That's why trade in goods are flowing under the rules of the AfCFTA. Services, rules and procedures for dispute settlement, protocol on competition policy, so you can actually have mergers and acquisitions across the continent under the rules that have been designed by the African states. A protocol on investment, you can, in one stroke of a pen, all these bilateral investment treaties that were between African countries are no longer relevant, because now you have an investment protocol that creates a common investment area. You have a protocol on intellectual property rights, a protocol on digital trade, and a protocol on women and youth in trade. So as you can see, even under the WTO, you actually don't have agreements in some of these areas. Conversations are still taking place about e-commerce, women and youth in trade. It is something that does not exist in any other free trade areas, but Africa has actually been able to come up with a protocol on this. Now, so the AfCFTA is supposed to bring policy coherence so that the regional economic communities that Adam mentioned, they have their own free trade areas. ECOWAS has its own common external tariff, EAC, SADC. Now the AfCFTA is actually bringing harmony across the continent when it comes to the issue of trade policy. Now, critical instruments for the operationalization of the agreement have also been developed. So if you go to the AfCFTA Secretariat website, you'll be able to see the tariff book. Countries are also already gazetting most of their rules of origin, and trade is now being done under the rules of the AfCFTA. Now, in 2021, the member state decided to have what is called a guided trade initiative, and the guided trade initiative is an initiative whereby countries have actually been exporting among each other using the rules of origin of the AfCFTA and also the trade facilitation elements of the AfCFTA. So that's what about the AfCFTA. So what does it promise? We have done a lot of work in the EC over the last 10 years, even before the start of the negotiations of the AfCFTA. And what has come out clearly is that the AfCFTA is going to bring positive developments within the continent. The first one, we have done a simulation whereby we remove the tariffs as under the schedule, under the protocol on trade in goods. We have also brought down some of the non-tariff barriers. And then we have done that from 2021 all the way to 2045. And what I can tell you is that if you have the AfCFTA, in the year 2045, I'm just going to talk about the year 2045, Africa's GDP in the year 2045, for that particular year, it will be 141 billion higher than if you did not have the AfCFTA. Now, intra-African trade, this one here, intra-African trade, in the year 2045, it will be 276 billion higher that year than if you did not have the AfCFTA. And most of this is going to happen under the agri-food. Remember, we have the issue of food security to deal with, industrialization and jobs, and also in terms of energy. So the way you interpret this result is to know, and this is the point I want to make, between now and 2045, if we do what we need to do under the AfCFTA, cumulatively, we are going to have an additional $3 trillion in terms of intra-African trade if we implement the AfCFTA effectively. Now, what this means is that next year and the year after, if the trade war and if the 10% tariffs that were imposed on African countries, it means the AfCFTA is a good response because it can overcompensate for the loss of the exports that Africa was sending to the US by using the platform of the AfCFTA. And we can come back and discuss this in details, but we have also done more work which shows that the AfCFTA will bring down inequality, it will bring down poverty, and we can give more details on that. Now, so for us to realize the AfCFTA potential, there are some transformative strategic actions that have to be undertaken, and the report goes into depth about those strategic actions. The first one is on the regional value chains, because by removing the barriers to trade, now it will be much easier to add value to the abundance of natural resources that I mentioned, and so you can actually create more intra-African trade in inputs and intermediate inputs. And some of the examples of these regional value chains given in the report is, for instance, the electric battery value chain that we have talked about the electric vehicles, whereby DRC and Zambia want to come together and start producing the precursors for electric batteries. And I think within that, there is also the conversations of how you can link that to the automotive sector here in Morocco. And so regional value chains need to be deepened. Another strategic action that needs to be undertaken is that we have to deal with the issue of energy. As you can see, we need to invest in electricity generation, transmission, and also distribution. And we have also done some work because, and I think this is an important point I want to make here. I have said that the AfCFTA is going to foster more 5 minutes. I will be able to do that, yeah. It's going to foster more intra-African trade, most of which is going to be on value-added goods. So the first question that comes to people's mind is that, oh, wow, once you do this, the carbon intensity for Africa's manufacturing process industrialization goes up. Now, what our work has shown is that indeed it is true. There's going to be an extra intensity when it comes to carbon emission. However, if we implement our nationally determined contributions, the unconditional one, not even the conditional one, we will more than compensate, and in fact, you'll see a reduction in the carbon emissions. So you can actually implement both the Paris Agreement and also the AfCFTA without having to worry about climate change. And the last point, strategic action here is we need to start thinking beyond the AfCFTA. And the reason why I'm saying this is because today, given what the US administration has done, it is very difficult for Africa to go as one because we do not have a common external policy, trade policy. We don't have that. The way the EU is responding, as Africa, we do not have that. And so if we want to respond to the industrial policies in other regions, us as a continent, it would be very difficult for us to have a coordinated industrial policy response to what is happening in the trade war. And so this is something that we need to start thinking as a continent. And so very quickly, those are the strategic actions that we need to take. And for that to happen, of course, we have to focus on our mega trends. That's the digitalization and the urbanization, because those are markets. The enablers, build the transport infrastructure, both hard and soft, and also address the development challenges, including the low productivity of our agriculture, take full advantage of our renewable potential, remove those policies or deal with those policies that foster inequality and that are not poverty sensitive, and also, of course, ensure peace and security. And we can come back during the conversation on how maybe to talk about what Africa is doing in some of these areas. Now, the report also talks about some gaps that need to be dealt with, because what we are doing as ECA, we are helping countries to come up with the implementation plans or implementation strategies of the AfCFTA. And what we have found is that there is a lot of incoherence on national implementation mechanisms, so we have to deal with this. We have to harmonize standards across the country, across the continent, because the protocol on goods and services, it has an annex that deals with issues of standards so that standards don't act as NTBs. We have to build digital public infrastructure if the digital protocol is to work, and then make sure that we have inclusiveness, so that, and I think the digital trade, the protocol on women and trade is actually the first step about ensuring that you have that inclusiveness. So these are some of the things that we recommended to the member states also need to do, and I think you can see them there, and I think we are going to share this report, this presentation, but they are very clear because they respond to the point that I raised earlier. And I'll conclude by saying that we expect the AfCFTA to really deepen and grow the intra-African trade. We expect it to promote Africa's industrialization, especially if we do the regional value chains, an example of which I've given. And the AfCFTA is really one of the right steps towards the realization of the African Economic Community that is espoused under the Abuja Treaty. And so there are very specific things that the member states need to do. And we look forward to the leadership of the countries that are represented here, including the Kingdom of Morocco, in making this the AfCFTA to deliver for the African development. So thank you very much, and I'm happy to answer any questions and give more details on what I presented. Thank you.
So thank you so much, Mr. Stephen Garriga. You are the Director of the Regional Integration and Trade Division at UN Economic Commission for Africa in Addis Ababa. So we will hit the floor directly to Mr. Adam El-Harika for your intervention. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will be fast. I just want to make a few reflections on developments in Morocco and how they link to the theme of Economic Report on Africa 2025. And just for discussion, of course, if we have the time, the information I'm going to share is based both on the report and on our own country profile for Morocco. As you know, the economy of Morocco is now really diversified. Morocco has one of the most diversified economies in Africa. So agriculture contributes 13.4%, industry and predominantly manufacturing 26.5%, and service 60%. On employment in Morocco, the rural sector is still an important employer for people, very important, 40% of total employment. 1/3 or 34% of the unemployed population are females, so the gender issues are important for Morocco. And the number of not in employment, education, or training people is about 1.9 million people, which is a bit high. Key development indicators: Morocco is a middle-income country, as you know, and has a human development index of 0.698, the medium ranking in terms of human development index. And absolute monetary policy in Morocco has declined considerably over the years to 1.4%, and multidimensional poverty rate is about 6.4%. Of course, more updated figures might be a bit different. Of course, in terms of challenges, you are all aware, of course, the recent earthquake, inflation coming down, and chronic drought. This year we had, alhamdulillah, better rain in Morocco, and things look different, of course. Now, emerging trends and opportunities since 2001, positive trends include continuation of structural reforms under the new development model, resilience of the Moroccan economy, of course, despite the chronic drought, the country continued to grow, and is expected to, was actually before the current crisis, expected to grow by 3.9%. Maybe this might be adjusted. The current account deficit, Mr. Karim talked about earlier, and of course the country has been able to attract increasing foreign direct investments that reached 110% in 2024. Private consumption and investment, as well as public expenditure, are major drivers of growth in Morocco, and especially in preparation for the two big sporting events, African Cup of Nations this year and the World Cup 2030. Now, Morocco's trade with Africa, just a few facts. Morocco's trade with Africa has been increasing. This is very promising, although it's still relatively low, but very promising. Overall trade with Africa increased from 36 billion dirham in 2013 to 52.7 billion in 2023. That is an increase of 45%. Now we can imagine how much Morocco can trade with the rest of Africa if AfCFTA is implemented. Not by, of course, by Morocco alone, but by Morocco and partners. This is a huge rise. Moroccan exports to Africa reached about 33 billion in 2023, doubling since 2013. And imports increased to 20 billion. So Morocco has a positive trade balance with the rest of Africa. Key export products from Morocco include fertilizers, phosphate-based fertilizers. Then automotive sector is really moving, and agri-food products. Now, where does Morocco stand in terms of trade openness? Morocco lies close to the continental average as far as trade openness is concerned, and regarding also real GDP of an average of about 3.5% over the last 5 years. So the level of trade openness reflects a balanced integration into global and regional trade, but also shows that Morocco can climb up. The potential is big. Well, Morocco's sectoral export gains under full implementation of AfCFTA. This is from the report. If our dreams come true, by 2045, Morocco's export gains under AfCFTA implementation are going to be high, dominated by industrial products. So this is competitive advantage for Morocco and agri-food exports and energy and services sectors. The projections highlight Morocco's strengths in industrial and agri-food sectors and the need to explore diversification into services and energy for broader AfCFTA benefits. Now, looking at the impact of AfCFTA on Morocco's tariff revenues, overall, I think Morocco by 2024 will have a positive, significant benefits from tariffs as far as AfCFTA implementation is concerned. Initial temporary decline in tariffs will be compensated significantly, and Morocco benefits will increase to about $0.2 billion by 2045. So the context of the AfCFTA as a transformative trade agreement for the African continent presents a lot of opportunities for Morocco as well, of course, as other African countries. There is a need for effective implementation and strategic economic policies for Morocco really to reap these benefits. My last slide, Morocco's trade, the one before the last, facilitation matrices. Total trade facilitation implementation is 84%. So Morocco is among the African countries that are really rank high in terms of trade facilitation at 84%, taking into account transparency, formalities, and paperless trade, and so on. There are a number of indicators used to give this index on the trade facilitation. So as you can see, Morocco really ranks among the highest countries in terms of trade facilitation measures. Finally, in terms of minerals, Morocco also, mineral production in Morocco is promising, and this is an area for Morocco to continue to diversify. And in terms of initiatives to accelerate economic development in Morocco within the framework of the AfCFTA, we can just mention a few initiatives, strategic initiatives like maritime connectivity, the launch of, this Tangier port and Dakhla port and a number of ports. These ports are really making a huge difference for Morocco and for connecting Morocco with the rest of the continent. Of course, there are also digital platforms that can help integrating Morocco, and financial integration, the Pan-African payments and settlement systems that are being discussed could also eventually help a lot. And finally, infrastructure work. I'm sure you are all aware of the infrastructure work and projects designed to connect Morocco with the rest of Africa. So, as you can see, there are opportunities really, and if we have time, we will have more discussion on implementation of AfCFTA in Morocco. And as I said, we have Mr. Brahim here, who has been working with us and with the government of Morocco on implementation strategies, AfCFTA implementation strategies in Morocco. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Adam. Thank you again, Mr. Stefan, for your insights. Thank you, Adam. Professor Adam, for shedding light on the Moroccan gains and what are the gains for the Moroccan economy. So we'll open the floor right now to the audience. So we'll gather questions from our audience. Yes. Go. Please be brief, present yourself. And
Good morning, I am Nathalie Fustier, the RC for Morocco. I have a question on AfCFTA on the protocol on women and youth on trade. And I would like to know what has been done in Morocco in this regard. Is there anything that has been starting, or what is the status of this protocol for Morocco? Thank you.
thank you. So if there are no other questions at this level, so maybe Mr. Stefan, if you have any information on the Moroccan context.
Okay, great. Sorry. No, it's a good question, but I think it's a question that was more directed to Morocco, eh? Morocco, the Kingdom of Morocco. Yeah, it could be broader. So I said there are no other trade agreements that have actually had this kind of protocol. And the reason why this protocol was actually added and negotiated was actually the realization that not every economic policy, including trade policy, are gender neutral. And so what the African leaders said is, why don't we have a protocol where we make commitments that are specifically going to enable the youth and the women benefit from trade. So one example of what the thinking is about is what we call the simplified trade regime. Because as you know, within the continent, a lot of the trade between African countries is actually done by women, especially near the borders. And so you have a situation whereby women would carry goods whose value, let's say, is between $500 and $1,000 or lower. Eh? And so they have to go through all those customs formalities that every trade has to go through. So what the protocol on women and trade is about is how do you come up with a regime that actually makes this kind of trade much easier. Now, on specifically on your question is this protocol was among the last to be negotiated and endorsed by the heads of state. In fact, I think it happened last year. The endorsement was last year, because this year they endorsed the annexes to the digital trade protocol. And so countries have had only 1 year to think about how to take this one forward. But I think it's a good question, and it's a question that we have to keep asking so that really it works for the young people and for the women.
Thank you. Yes, go ahead.
Thank you very much. I'm Shakila Umutoni. I'm the ambassador of Rwanda here in the Kingdom of Morocco. Thank you so much for the very informative presentations and the perspective of the future of our continent. I have 2 quick questions. First off, it's related to the AfCFTA. We've seen the time it took between the signing of AfCFTA in Kigali and the time all countries in Africa have agreed to be a part of that. And at the same time, we are facing a changing world where Africa really needs to come together. In the presentation, especially, I think both of you have mentioned how much Africa is to gain from the full implementation of AfCFTA. And my question is, how do you foresee governments in Africa, but also the private sector, getting involved for a faster and more coordinated implementation, full implementation of the AfCFTA. My second question is related to the trade war that you also mentioned, and I would really like to hear more on how you see AfCFTA being one of the tools for Africa to face that trade war. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So we have 2 questions on there.
Good morning, everybody. I hope that you are spending lovely days. Thanks for bunch of thanks for presentation. They are very interesting. So, in terms of connection between African countries, like we say, Mr. Adam, my first question is about what is the role of Moroccan government to connect and those African countries, what are the keys to challenge or to overcome this challenge first? And as you know, that as an African country, we have everything. We have potential. Expectations are very high, like Mr. Moderator said, but challenges are more higher. So what are the role of the Moroccan government in this case? And the prices, in terms of prices, if we want to connect all these African countries together to talk the same language, to talk the same ideas, what are the prices? As you know, the intervention of Russia, United States, other countries. So are we able to connect together? This is my question. Thanks.
Thank you. So we have another.
Thank you. My name is Selma Touhami. I'm country economist at the African Development Bank. I don't have specifically a question, but rather some add-on insights. Well, among all the pertinent recommendations that has been given, I think there is the importance to develop a strong and resilient infrastructure, especially in transport. That is the real key that will ensure the connectivity between all the countries. So this is a challenge that African countries still face nowadays. So there is really an urge to develop a strong and resilient transport connectivity between the countries. Also, another lever that could deepen the integration of African economies is the financial integration between the countries. And I'm thinking of the experience of Morocco in developing the Casablanca Finance City as a model to really deepen and the synergies between the countries. I'd like to also highlight the role of the AfDB in this area to accompany countries in building resilient infrastructure and helping them deepen their financial institutions, financial services.
Thank you. Thank you. Just to precise to our audience, we'll have another panel. We'll focus on the Moroccan case. So we'll be discussing very Moroccan-specific issues regarding the AfCFTA. Maybe the last question.
Thank you. So good morning, Your Excellencies. So I'm Kautar Mudar. I'm the head of partnerships and resources at the Pan-African Youth Union. So first of all, I would like to thank the ECA for being an empowering, partner. So across a couple of years in the continent. So we actually are working on one of the largest Africa Startup Forum that will take place on July from 7th to 10th in the Kingdom of Morocco in Agadir, where we're going to convene almost 1,000 participants from the 54 countries. At the same time, we are inviting more than 350 startups. So my main point now is that to focus more on the startups. And we are delighted to see that one of the protocols on the AfCFTA is about youth and women, which are the key, especially in the continent. So my question is, how can the startups in Africa take advantage from this protocol, especially that most of the startups, they are always like, facing problems since the first like early stage. And thank you.
So thank you so much. So we'll get back to our audience, our panelists, sorry.
Okay, so because there's another panel, so let me try to be brief because I can actually go on and on.
So we have two questions on the private sector.
Please feel free to stop me. So the first question that was asked by the ambassador of Rwanda, the two questions are actually related. I said we have done initial analysis on the implications of the tariff issues on the continent. And first of all, the important thing for people to note is that the US, the share of the US as an export market for Africa has declined to about only 5%. So for every $100 that Africa exports, only $5 go to the US. And so it means that as a region, I think we are not as exposed as other regions. However, when you come to individual countries, Morocco included, they are above the 5%. And so there is an issue for some individual countries that they have to look at. In fact, we have gone even deeper for each African country, and we have identified the top 3 tariff lines that are going to be impacted by the 10%, not talking about the reciprocal tariffs. And your country, this country, are going to be quite hit. You'll be hit very hard on the coffee. Morocco is going to be hit very hard on the automotive sector and also on the fertilizers and chemicals. So we have done that for each and every African country. And then the next thing we have done is to say, okay, this being the case, which African countries import the top importers of coffee, of fertilizers and automotive sector? So that now you, Rwanda, can actually say, here is an alternative market because the AfCFTA is already offering you that, which answers your second question of how we respond to this trade war. So we are happy for each of the countries to be able to provide that information. On the connectivity of Morocco to the rest of Africa, which I think was directed to Adam, the only thing I would want to add here is that the AfCFTA is not going to happen on its own. The same day in Kigali, when the AfCFTA was signed, the leaders also signed something we call the Free Movement of People Protocol, of which only 4 African countries have ratified. Now, goods are moved by people, services are provided by people. So it is very critical that the Free Movement Protocol, Free Movement of People Protocol is done. And lastly, the issue of the open sky. We have what we call the Single African Air Transport Market. Royal Air Morocco, Air Rwanda, Kenya Airways, Ethiopian Airlines. They need to be able to move these people that I'm talking about under the FMP because it is this kind of, and by the way, our regional value chains are not going to happen without the ability to have this connectivity. So that's another thing that I think we need to implement in addition to building the infrastructure. Thank you.
So much. So, Mr. Adam.
Sorry. Okay, thanks. Very briefly, I think we are going to discuss more questions related to Morocco. But I just want to mention a few incidental occasions. I saw how market discovery is important. It's extremely important. In addition to the protocols, infrastructure, financial payment systems, and so on, and what ADB is doing. Actually, I've been working very closely with African Union and ADB on these issues. It is also important to empower the private sector within each country so that they can discover businesses elsewhere. I just took a flight one day, I was on my way to Nairobi, and I met with 2 young Moroccan engineers were traveling to South Africa to support some companies that work on renewable energy. The next time, I also found 2 Moroccans who were flying to Tanzania to do business on fertilizers. So you can see, so we market discovery, private sector support, empowerment is important in order to, build linkages with the rest of the continent and make use of the opportunities provided by AfCFTA. Thank you.
Thank you. So, Mr. Stefan, if you have to.
Yeah, so for the Pan-African youth, I have to respond and say that actually, besides the protocol on women and youth, our youth are very entrepreneurial and very innovative. So we actually have the intellectual property rights, which is going to make it easier for our young people to innovate and not incur huge costs of patenting and whatever. And then there is also the competition policy, which makes sure that whatever the startups do, they have a fair place to operate. So for us, I think the AfCFTA is not just a tool for now, but actually a tool for optimizing on the creativity and the innovativeness of our youth. But governments have to do what they need to do. And I'm glad that we are doing this in a think tank, because we know you give the options to the government, and the government talks to other governments. Thank you.
Exactly, that's the role of think tank. So thank you so much, Mr. Stefan Karinga, Mr. Adam El Herika. Thank you for your insight. Thanks for the optimistic view, but also the evidence-based analysis showing the gains for Africa of such mega projects. So thank you so much. Thanks to the audience for their interactions, and see you in the next panel.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the panel discussion, Implications for Morocco and North Africa, will now begin. Please welcome our moderator for this session, Zubair bin Hammoush, Economic Affairs Officer at the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa, Office for North Africa. And our speakers, Larbi Jaidi, Senior Fellow at the Policy Center for the New South, and Nabil Boubrahimi, Professor of Economics at Ibn Tufayl University. Zubair bin Hammoush, the floor is yours.
No, it's okay. Thank you. Thank you. Welcome. So I will moderate this panel, which is focused on Morocco. I have 2 distinguished panelists. So Mr. Larbi Jaidi, who is a senior fellow and professor in economics, and Mr. Boubrahimi, who is a professor also and expert in trade. So maybe I will start with you, Mr. Boubrahimi. As you worked with ECA on the AfCFTA strategy for Morocco, there are 3 questions in this panel. The first one is the relevance. It's a big name, but the relevance of this ERA report for Morocco development, and in particularly for the importance of trade for Morocco development and challenges. So the floor is yours. You have 7 minutes. 7 minutes. Oh, you have a presentation? No, not presentation. Okay, you can, I think you can, yeah. I don't know the organizers. Yes. Yeah. So you have 7 minutes, please. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I'm very happy to be with you. I would thanks Economic Commission of North of Africa and the Policy Center for her invitation. The point of my intervention, the idea of establishing African Continental Free Trade Agreement as fundamental step forward to deepen cooperation and economic integration in Africa could prove salutary for the countries of North Africa and economic African countries in economic context of resurgence nationalist tendencies and renewed protectionist hostility between the major powers, United States, China, and the European Union, and the potential risks to the multilateral systems. In this respect, my intervention will be structured around the two axes. Political and economic levers likely to consolidate integration effort and the challenge to sustainable growth, economic creative, and boosting the role of the private sector in north of Africa. With regard of the first axis, it has to be said that the success of integration process requires integrated approach to ensure coherence between the strategy implementation of FTA and articulation of the other policies, particularly in the fields of industry, agriculture, infrastructures, education, and investment, which contribute giving dynamic inputs to countries' development. This would involve examining a way of exploiting the potential for progress and restructuring cooperation in the depth in line with the Agenda 2063 with the view to establish a single market for goods, services, and facilitating the movement of capital and people, and laying the foundations to create of a continental customs union. With this in mind, Morocco is working to establish a multitude of levers to support its commitment to continental integration, including, by way of illustration, three major structuring projects. The Royal Atlantic Initiative has a visionary ambition to that projects the kingdom and the countries bordering to Atlantic maritime space onto horizon of shared, sustainable, and inclusive development and prosperity. This vision is based on participatory approach that includes economic, security, migration, energy, political, and climate challenges. This initiative will be built around innovative structuring projects and will focus effort on investment to generate sustainable, shared wealth, structured mutually beneficial projects that ultimately empower people and promote their economic and social inclusion. The second one is the Moroccan-Nigerian gas pipeline, strategic project to address major concerns linked to energy security of African partner countries and production costs. This pipeline stretches over 5,700 kilometers along West Africa coast from Nigeria, passing through several countries, African countries. On the geo-economic front, plans for the Nigeria-Morocco gas pipeline were launched in 2016 during His Majesty King Mohammed VI visit to Abuja. Two active SENSAD member countries and will connect the Kingdom of Morocco to Nigerian gas resources. The project is strategic importance for Africa in the view of its integrating aims and this potential impact to well-being of African population in general and those of the Sahel-Sahara region in particular. The last project is the port of Dakhla Atlantic. This strategic port will be one of the main levers in Morocco development model with the Tangemed and will inevitably contribute to boosting to Afro-African partnership throughout its knocked of effect on investment and trade. The project is
of crucial importance of the southern provinces for the countries of West Africa and also for the continental free trade. Indeed, this port will be support to performance the national and regional production sectors, agriculture, mining, energy, tourism, trade, enhance.
2 minutes.
Yes. Enhance to value fishery resources and competitiveness of the fishing industry. The challenge of sustainable growth, economy, creativity, focus the crucial important sustainability growth, promotion, innovation, and creativity, and boosting the role of the private sector. In this respect, it is important to emphasize that the prospects for the operationalization of the African Free Trade Agreement are fully in line with the Kingdom choice about terms of strategic sectors. In this sense, the private sector has key roles to play in supporting the state's action under Morocco's African strategy. Several financial levers has been put in place to better support the fabric of Moroccan business oriented towards the continent. In this vein, it is important to emphasize the best identified within the framework of Morocco new development models, concern 3 objectives that are in line with the challenges of sustainability and innovation: to become digital nation, to become regional hub for education, research, and innovation, become to regional of low carbon energy. The contribution of the private sector, given maturity, the presence of certain sectors, Moroccan bank, telecommunication, OCP, RAM, Royal Air Morocco, the national flagship could contribute directly to or indirectly to financial the national strategy implementation FTA agreement. In the end, such approach is likely to foster a renewed relationship with Africa, a win-win relationship that mobilizes complementarity, driving economic specialization, profiles, and helps building regional value chain in high potential sector, agro-industry, textiles, automotive industry, tourism, higher education, innovation, to cultural industry and pharmaceutical industry. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Ibrahimi. So now I give the floor to Mr. Jahidi, who will first talk about the implementation challenges of the AfCFTA in Morocco, and second, the role of the private sector. So as you have 2 questions, we can give you 8 minutes.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. On the 2 questions, I will begin by some remarks on the implementation of the AfCFTA. 2023 was the African Union year of accelerating the implementation of African Continental Free Trade Agreement. And 2024, in address to heads of states, African heads of state, Secretary General of AfCFTA stated that the need for heads of state to ensure that the implementation of this project is not only accelerated, but also effective and sustainable. And I think that this project has made a lot of progress. First, on an institutional level, because of now the institutional framework or the institutional architecture is nearly complete. And the Secretariat is increasing in capacity. The technical committees have been formed. Secondly, as you say, instruments accompanying trade in goods and services are in progress. To the finer points of the rules of origin or the dispute settlement are still being finalized now. And protocols have been adopted on investment, on intellectual property, on competition, on digital trade, and on women and youth. Adjustment Fund and the Pan-African Payment System has been launched. And we observe that 3 annual AfCFTA REC, because the coordination between the different institutions is important. There are meetings, and the meetings have taken place. As such, and in this picture, I think that protocols have now been agreed and adopted du jour. But in de facto, the operationalization is in the early stages. I think that in trade agreement, the ambition is not only tariff liberalization, but also to include industrialization through regional value chain. And in this regard, the investment protocol of AfCFTA is particularly important. And it is crucial for the development of the project. And I think that for this to happen, much will be depend on how the agreement of this protocol is implemented and the response to the business environment challenges that companies often face the project. The main question is how can the full framework of this project be put into practice to include the private sector. The protocols or the process of AfCFTA is at crossroads, I think. Yes, we have some models, some global models, some economic models with some recommendation and some results. But there are models or economic models. I am not opposite to the models, but what is important is in the ground how we act and how we take and implement all the protocols we have seen it. In addition, I think that the policy frameworks to reduce trade barriers on the desire to create a regional value chain, we have the challenge from firms is to use the agreement in shaping their investment and their decision. So the simple assumption of all implementations entails multiple steps and processes, all of which can be subject to administrative delays, to contestation in the reality, and this includes completion of a negotiation. This includes also domestication of agreements into national law of all the countries. It includes also compliance, implying also training of staff and rollout of new procedures. It includes also utilization of the agreement and enforcement of the rules against breaches, and the social political capabilities to pull this off in a coordinated fashion across government agencies. There are, I think, the very challenges of this project. In Morocco, private sector is one of the stakeholders in this project. We have a global approach. This global approach has engaging the private sector reflected 2 points. First is the importance of cross-ministerial coordination, but also the way that the AfCFTA was framed as an opportunity rather than a threat. And the groundwork for the AfCFTA negotiation and implementation in Morocco involved studies and research by the Moroccan Ministry of Economic and Finance. And based on the guidelines of these studies, discussions were aimed to ensure the active participation of various stakeholders in the negotiation process for the first time, and enhancing the protection of national interests through a deep understanding of specific challenges associated to the targeting of particular products, services, and countries. And third, assessing potential threats of the nation's industrial base and the economic environment. And the debate were instrumental in formulating national position of Morocco in the negotiation. So I think that overall the private sector expressed a real satisfaction regarding this process, Moroccan process, and the consultative method. But we have to recognize that private sector in Morocco, as in other African countries, is really heterogeneous. And we have two components. First, SMEs, and the leader or the champion or the national champion. And we have to target the implementation or the accompanying these two components, taking in account the structure of the private sector and the real measures adapted to even companies. In conclusion, yes. In conclusion, I think that if you want that I stop here, okay, no problem. Some recommendation rapidly. Some recommendation for the future. I think that AfCFTA is a long river and not quite a river. We have to take in account that other international experience, as in Europe, has taken decades and decades to be in working efficiently. What about the recommendation? First is to engage the private sector in policy dialogue of awareness raising at multiple level. Because the private sector has to be able to have a very comprehensive of the rules, not only the framework of the protocols, but the rules are inside even each protocol. Secondly, to identify the roles of African Union, REX, and AfCFTA, and the coordination between the three institutions, because this coordination will be positive to have a clear pathway for the private sector. Third, support sectorial regional value chain platforms toward problem-based regional cooperation. 4. Explicitly connect trade in goods to services, to investment, and to value addition policies. 5. Canal strategic finance toward AfCFTA investment. 6. The establishment of a guarantee fund for financing SMEs and mid-caps. 7. Leverage the public-private partnerships in this project, because this is a veritable, a real leverage to develop more support on building both public and private capabilities. And 8, the recommendation is to understand and engage in political nature of trade and business environment. Last but not least, the operationalization of AfCFTA committees or national committees was also requested. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jaidi. So we have maybe some time for 2 or 3 questions maximum. Any question? So everything was clear. If there is no question, we can close this panel. Thank you. Yeah. Oh.
I was just going to say that we have not talked a lot about the trading services protocol, because you know Morocco, this is one of those protocols where Morocco really is well prepared, both in terms of, because you know there are 5 sectors under services that are open. So you have travel, you have transport, you have financial services, business operations. And I think the examples that he gave, the example of the banks here, I think for Morocco, it's actually ready to go, even as you build the connectivity for the trade in goods, for the services. Morocco is ready to go. And that's not where most African countries are. I just wanted to mention that.
The Moroccan had experience with the free trade agreement with the United States of America, and we prepare for all the sector of services the concession. And we also send our new concession to WTO. And we know, I worked a lot of in the sector, service sectors, distribution and education, finance, assurance. I think we have more than 5 sectors. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Maybe Adam, you want to say something to close the meeting, or?
Thank you. Just also to highlight one thing we talked about before, this regional value chains. And regional value chains are very important, really. So we have countries like the Democratic Republic of Congo, Zambia, that produce a lot of raw material, including cheap copper and others. That can be really processed by countries that have the capacity to do so. In Morocco now, they produce cars from A to Z. So this would be a good opportunity to share, and of course, to build partnerships with other countries. And this is one of the things we are working on to support. As you know, countries like Democratic Republic of Congo, they produce a lot of things that are processed outside Africa. So why not processing in Africa? I am one of those who always advocated for local content policy. And some economists at some time, they used to tell us that this is protectionism, Now protectionism is coming from there. Yeah, so there is an opportunity, really, a real opportunity. I'm not going to say what President Trump is doing is not risky. It is risky, and it is difficult to calculate its impact. But we should also be very mindful of the opportunities for Africa. I would like to thank you all for taking the time to come here and for sharing your ideas and listening to what we have to say. I think the report is available on ECA website. Not sure if we share the link, but just the ECA works website, www.uneca.org. Then you go to publications and you will find reports, series of reports we produced actually. When I was in Addis Ababa, we produced a series of reports on industrialization, value addition, and they are all available. Of course, we have also reports on regional integration and trade, many of them, and other on our website. I'd like to really thank the Policy Center for the New South, Professor Al-Nawi and team, all of them, for making this event happen. And we look forward to further collaboration with them on many, many areas. There's a lot also to work on. Thank you to my office team and to you all for the time. So have a good day. Thanks.
Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes the launch of the 2025 Economic Report on Africa. We sincerely thank you for your presence and look forward to welcome you in upcoming events at the Policy Center for the New South.